Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. I am Rodney West, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour as we focus on the booking of Mid-South Wrestling in 1984. And the man that's with us here tonight was the one that was the leader, the creative force. He was the main man, if you will. We're talking about the superstar, Bill Dundee. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, brother, I appreciate you. Appreciate the kind words. So it'll be fun for the next hour.
Yeah, we're gonna examine it, and we're gonna maybe we're doing a comparison between today's wrestling and yesterday's wrestling, and so we'll get to that.
There's really no comparison.
Nah, I'm with you on that. Today, it seems to me like wrestling of today is more like a parody of what you did at Mid-South, and kind of kind of almost insult to those wrestling fans back then. But we'll discuss that a little bit later on. How did you get started? Back in 1983, I think, is when Bill Watts came to Memphis, and tell us how that unfolded.
Well, I mean, Jerry Jarrett knew he was coming, and he kind of told Lawler and me and Eddie Marlin. Two or three of us knew that Watts was going to show up. So anyway, he did show up. He introduced himself to everybody. So we were sitting in the office, and he was getting ready to go. So he said, well, them and Jarrett had been talking what they were going to do to help Watts' therapy. So Jarrett said, Bill, if I was you, I would talk to that little fella sitting over there and see if he wants to come be your booker. So and he said, would you like to go to Louisiana? I said, what does it pay? So he told me, he said, okay, you want a week below $3,000.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
No.
He was speaking your language, huh? He was speaking your language, wasn't he?
Right. Yeah. I mean, what he said was true. So anyway, off we went. He said, you bring your crew, Pete. So I said, okay, let me talk to Jerry Jarrett and see who and what. So Ricky and Robert, they were using them here, but they weren't over like they got over in Louisiana. So,
well, that's because probably the Fabulous Ones, wouldn't it?
Well, kind of, but well, they weren't. I mean, I was here. Jerry Lawler was here. Scanlon Steve, Handsome Jimmy. So there was a lot of guys that was over in the territory.
Right.
So when they went down there, they were the smallest guys I get being pushed on top in Louisiana. So you know how the history there. So
yeah. So was Bill Watts? Was he? Did he put up any obstacles bringing whoever you wanted in?
No. I think I've told you this when we were talking. It was sitting at his house. What a house he had up in Tulsa, but that's another story. So anyway, he says to me, hey, stud, you ain't going to fill this place of midgets, are you? So his wife was there, and she said, excuse me, Mr. Bill Watts, go take a look at your checkbook before you jump all over that boy. And he went, okay, and he never said another word.
So when you first got there,
on fire, turning them away, and he's bitching about small guys.
Yeah. When you first got there, what was the first thing you said this place needed?
Baby faces. It looked like baby faces.
Right. Right now,
I mean, Jim Duggan. I love Jim Duggan, but he was the top baby face. How was little girls going to scream all over him?
So that's your main objective, is to try to expand the demographic. So because basically when I was watching the show prior to you getting there was primarily men and, older people and right. Basically no women, no children, basically no kids in the audience. Right. And let's be honest, men and, people of a certain age, they don't buy merchandise. They don't buy any merch whatsoever. They just kind of show up. If they go to the concession stand and get a beer, good for them. But Other than that, they're not going to walk out with a T-shirt or a picture, and you really need it to expand the audience. And I got to say, within 6 weeks, Irish McNeil's Boys Club was full, and you had women and kids and everything in there.
Yeah, it was a whole demographics changed. Yeah.
Which was
Ricky and Robert, and that's what we was trying to do.
Which was more in line. Which was more in line with what they were doing in Memphis, Jarrett Promotions, wasn't it?
Right. I mean, yeah.
Well, it's amazing.
We always had that base in Memphis.
So, in your apparently in your main thrust, you needed a big tag team, and so that's when you come up with Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey. Now, was it their idea to be a team, or was it your idea?
Bit of both.
And then you brought the.
I mean, they knew one another. They both worked for Nick Gullis when they started, so they like been around one another. Not so much doing anything, but just on the same shows when Nick was running. So they go along good. Then we needed a manager because Dennis could talk, but you know how Bobby was kind of shy back then. He didn't say an awful lot. So we found James E. Cornett.
The third.
Like to go to Louisiana.
Yeah, the third element to the Midnight Express. Sure.
Right. So we put him do the talking, and the rest is history, as they say.
And you have to admit, when you see Bobby and Dennis wrestling, it's like watching a work of art. I mean, they know exactly what they're doing from the time the bell rings to the time till the time the end of the match.
Right.
And I think that was a very important. And I noticed in most of the shows, the TV shows, you always matched them against someone decent. They never had a struggle with whoever they're wrestling. You gave them competition more so than just what they would be used to by seeing, if they were on TBS wrestling the Mulkeys, which are just crash dummies that they practice holds on, So I thought that was important to be able to get the Midnight Express to show that, if you're going to have a major team, you've got to have major competition, even if it's on television.
Right.
But yes, it also, Memphis was notorious. I mean, you went against Bobby Eaton on Memphis, Tennessee TV and for the Mid-America title right on television in a, expiration time match, and which was a brilliant match, by the way.
Yeah.
So as you get ready, you're heading in, and so now you're getting ready to. When exactly did you start in '83? When exactly did you start with Bill Watts?
Well, I had my book. I should have looked at the damn thing. January, I think. You
started in January. Okay. So, So the first thing you got the Midnight Express. You've got the in the first show you're going to have. You brought Terry Taylor. Tell us about the picking of Terry Taylor as part of your crew.
Well, I thought Terry Taylor was the most underrated wrestler in the business at that time. He was a good-looking kid. He went to the gym. He worked out, had a good body, and he could work. And people, I don't know what people didn't see on him, but I thought he was he could get over, and I was right. I pushed him, and he got over.
You sure were. And against the first crew was Nikolai Volkoff and Crusher Darso.
Right.
I want to tell you, I was watching Volkov. Here he is, well over 300 pounds, and he worked, kind of like smaller guys. I mean, he was fast.
Yeah. So was Darso.
Just a tremendous team, and then you did the situation, the angle between Terry Taylor and Volkov, and where Terry Taylor beats Volkov on TV. And then Terry Taylor, Darso hits the ring, and then they both, Taylor beats both of them basically. Holds his own against both of the Russians. Now, is that the key of beginning the process of getting Terry Taylor over?
Yeah.
And it's against two established people, as Nikolai Volkoff, 300 pounds, Darso near 300 pounds, and then you got Terry Taylor, smaller guy, quicker, and is able to take both Russians on. And it really turned out really nice.
Yeah.
So
that was the difference of me being there running the bike than when Bill or whoever was booking for Watts. Before that, they didn't do that kind of stuff. They were just winners and losers, and the big guy just kicked the little guy's ass. But that doesn't always work that way.
Then you had your later on in that first show, you had Jim Duggan and the Junkyard Dog. Now, as I see it, you were beginning to build where you had a crew where you could mix the crew up and they can wrestle just about anybody and can draw a house. And Junkyard Dog and Jim Duggan was one of those teams, and you had them against this Jeff Sword and Larry Higgins, and then Nikolai Volkoff and Darso comes out again, and apparently they've been working with each other in the arenas.
They did.
Did they work together? Because it seemed like they were.
That again.
Was the Junkyard Dog and Jim Duggan working with Darso and the Nikolai Volkoff in the arenas? Some of them. And then later in the match, we have the beginning of where Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA, they're the Mid-South Tag Team Champions at that point, and they're in a match when Jim Cornette comes out with the bag and begins to challenge them and talk about how they're chicken, how they've been running from the Midnight Express, and they just wanted to tag, a championship match. And of course, I always think it's very important that whoever comes into an area, the two things you really want to do when they first come in is establish why they are there, and then they're finished. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And so you have Magnum TA, you had Magnum TA, and you had Mr. Wrestling 2. And now tell us how you decided you're going to tar and feather TA.
How we're going to what with TA?
How did you decide that this is what you're going to do with TA?
Well, when we got there, he was the only guy that was a kind of half over, and we changed most of the crew. So Bill Watts had put a little time in on Magnum, and he was a nice kid, and he was very nice to the back and that. So, and he wanted to learn. So he was easy to do business with. And I was always into that. If you're easy to do business with, I will use you.
Well, then that's when Bobby and Dennis hit the ring, and they hit Wrestling 2 with the blackjack, and 2 sells as it nobody can, and he's up underneath the ropes, and then they double up on Magnum TA and begin the tar and feather. And I noticed while this was going on, kids were running up to Wrestling 2, who was right on the ring apron underneath the bottom rope, trying to get him up to save TA. And then the attendants had to get him back away from the ring. And I think that's where Wrestling 2 and TA were already over with the people.
Yeah.
And I just wonder I think that's because the emotional connection that TA and 2 was having, which I think that many of the wrestlers today are having a problem making that emotional connection. People are basically turning this wrestling show to watch the car crash. And whereas they don't really care about the wrestler in the ring, they don't care about Wrestling 2. They don't care about, they didn't care about who's in the ring, but they cared about Wrestling 2. They cared about Magnum TA. They wanted to see this thing. And I think that's what helped, get the situation with the Midnight Express over.
Right. But that was how we kind of tried to lay it out back in that day. I mean, we believed and we wanted the people to believe.
Sure.
So you did stuff that was, believable.
So now we have Magnum TA and we have Magnum TA and Wrestling 2 out there, and they're talking about they're having the interview. TA still got his chicken suit on. He's still tarred and feathered, and makes a tremendous, powerful interview that sets the stage for what's coming up in the arenas. Now, the one thing I remember when we first got there was the TVs with Mid-South were bicycled. That means that there were only a certain amount of new shows that were going to be shows. So if you filmed on Wednesday, there's only a certain markets that would see that. And then as the weeks go on, that tape that you may take 3 weeks to get all the way around.
Right.
Was that hard to decide? Because in some cases, I would assume that some of the talent would be gone by the time those shows played.
Oh yeah, you had to kind of stay up with in your head or in your book. You had to know who's going to be and who's not going to be. But the Rock and Roll Express wasn't going nowhere. Jim Duggan wasn't going nowhere. We brought a couple other guys in, Dennis and Bobby. They weren't going nowhere. So I kind of knew it in my head what we was doing, who's going, who's not going. Buddy Landale wasn't going nowhere, although he was a pain in the ass sometimes, but he could draw you some money.
So eventually, did you ever talk to Bill about finally catching him up? Catching the TVs up?
Shows?
Yeah, where the same show plays out throughout the whole area, not doing this bicycle thing.
Yeah, and we got it down to 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I think it was much
right,
better.
When we got there, was about 4 or 5 weeks behind in some places.
I remember we lived in Alexandria, and we could, there was 3 different shows playing at the same time. I mean, there was different weeks, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. What was the most recent thing? All right. Then you had Jim Neidhart. Tell us about Jim Neidhart.
What you see is what you get. Big, strong devil. I mean, I got along good with him. He wasn't no Ricky Morton selling, but for a big guy, he was all right. I like Jim.
And he did a pretty decent interview as well, I thought.
Right.
Now, when it came time, did you give Jim Neidhart his notice, or did he come to you and ask to leave?
Did he go to Dallas?
I'm not sure which way it went. I was thinking he we worked for the WWE. Seems like.
Yeah, when they're leaving, they'll say to you, "Hey, I can," you know how it is. You just how they're talking. So he wanted to leave, so we just let him.
Sure. So now you get to Steve Williams and Crusher Darsow. How was it working with Steve Williams?
Whatever you want, Steve, that's fine. Yeah, because he's going to do it anyway. No, you had no problem. He was a tough son of a gun, could wrestle, shoot, wrestle, do it all. Strong, went to the gym, in good shape, but no problems.
You know, I when I was watching this match, Steve Williams and Crusher Darsow, I noticed that Bill Watts made a comment about how big they are. And I was just wondering if he was trying to give a backhanded insult or something to the rest of the crew, because, he was all about having the big guys, and especially when it comes to football players. Watts loved football players.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I told you when his wife said that, they tell him to take a look at his checkbook.
Sure.
They came and said, "You ain't going to fill this place up with midgets, are you?"
No.
What? Take a look at your checkbook before you insult all them people. He never said it again.
And then last in that program was Butch Reed, and Reed was over, I think,
Right.
and pretty decent. But this time he was against Rick Rude, and let's just say that, and this is post ravishing Rick Rude, ladies and gentlemen. This looks like about when he first started.
Right.
It was like Reed was having to. I didn't realize that Reed was a dentist, but he had to pull some teeth in that one to get the thing going.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, but I must admit, when Reed took him and slammed him, his throat into the ropes, I mean, he hit with some velocity, and finally he did the big gorilla slam, and that was the end. Tell me how important it was to already have Butch Reed and the Junkyard Dog, and they pretty much was a lot of time the headliners in lots of the towns. Tell it how it was important to them that they were already established.
Well, you know this, but you have to have some people that are established and over, and that's your mainstay, just like Lawler and Dundee was in Memphis. We was around here forever and established, so we had other people come in and do this and do that, but you have to have your mainstay people. Sure.
Sure. All right, that ends that particular show, and then the next week we're getting ready for the other one, and then we're going to reestablish what had happened prior, and that's the tar and feathering of Magnum TA and the beating of Wrestling 2. Tell me how it was with working with Wrestling 2, and I know at that point you're probably setting the stage what will happen between 2 and TA. How was he to get along with, and did he agree with the direction you were going to take him in?
Not really. Too like to run too. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of that way too. But and he knew he was trying to get Magnum over by putting him with him, and that's really what I was doing. I thought you'll get a rub off too, and that'll work. Sure. But they ended up getting mad at one another in the dressing room, and but that's another story.
So there was really friction between 2 and TA?
Yeah.
Wow. Was it 2 or was it TA that was causing it?
Story 2. They go into a beef over something, and 2 is getting ready to get in the shower. So he's trying to talk and get undressed at the same time. He gets his boots off and he gets in the shower. So he's still trying to cut in the Magnum. So the PA is in the shower and he's all dressed, ready to go home. So T says something to him, and he said, "You let him ball head, motherfucker." And he walks into the shower. And we get him out and he was dressed. He had his jeans on, his nice shirt on, his boots on, his cowboy boots. So that's how hot he 2 got him by just talking.
Wow.
So they had a little friction for a while.
Wow. Well, Jay Smith was asking about the Butch Reed Rick Rude match, and he said that sounded like a really good match. That's not what I remember, though. I remember that was, whew, you would think that after you saw that match, and ladies and gentlemen, if you ever get a chance, it's on YouTube, check that match out. You might want to think that Mr. Rude might want to get into another profession, but luckily he didn't give up, and he became a great superstar, no doubt about it.
Right.
But yeah, that was yeah, that was one of those. Then we continue. You're still building with Terry Taylor and Darso, and this is the particular situation where they hung Terry Taylor from the top rope, and it was you had both of them doing that.
Did he take the bump and hang himself, or did they hang him?
No, they put the they had Volkov first had the rope around Terry Taylor. He was going to give him the hangman's with the rope. Terry come up and over, and then he drop kicked him, and it broke the hold. And then Darso got him down. They put the noose around him, and then they took and threw him over the top rope. And then both of them held the rope and hung him from out. And he was on the outside of the ring over the top rope. Them people in the studio that are in the Irish McNeil Boys Club, I'm telling you, they were screaming.
Yeah. Well, they hadn't really seen like Terry Taylor was rock and roll.
Right.
And look how big they all were. So we had brought in a crew of smaller guys, and the people got behind them.
Sure, and I think you described it as the David versus Goliath, where you don't think the little guy has any chance, but with their speed and their agility and their wits, they're able to overcome, no doubt. Right. So now we've got the Midnight Express. They're back again, and with Cornette. They're against Mike Jackson and Roger Bond. Again, you don't put them against people do not know what they're doing. You get them a competitive match, and this time TA and Wrestling 2 are sitting at the desk, and the rules at Mid-South was if you were sitting at the desk, you were not allowed to interfere in a match at all. And if you did, you got a $2,500 fine. Also, let's talk about something real quick. And I think that it's the difference between today's wrestling and yesterday. Back then, you had rules. Today, it's like the only rule is there are no rules. And how important was it to make sure the rules were being enforced? That way, when things did happen, that then you get the appropriate response.
Right. And that was my job.
Just to make sure.
It was my show, so
sure.
I would enforce the rules.
So you have TA and 2, they get $2,500 fine, and Boyd Pierce is adamant. If you interfere in this match, you're going to get fined $2,500. Well, Cornette and the Midnight Express decide we're going to make another chicken today. They're going to tar and feather their opponents, and it was more than Magnum TA can handle. And then he hit the ring, and then Bobby and Dennis was doing a number on TA, and then 2 come out there, and then Boyd Pierce was saying, I begged them not to go. They're going to get fined $2,500, but they got in there and they cleaned house, and Midnight Express left the situation there. And again, building towards the big matches coming up in the arenas, especially when it concerns the Mid-South Tag Team Championship. And again, making the tag team titles an important thing.
Right.
Now, a question I want to ask you is that you wanted to put a lot into a tag team as a main event attraction. Today, in today's wrestling, there seems to be no Midnight Express or no Rock and Roll Express. What do you think it is? Is the companies just don't see any value in it, or what?
It's hard. I mean, I really don't know why tag team wrestling went away. But Tennessee and Louisiana was tag team territory, so we were used to it. So, but today I have no idea.
Well, it just
I don't watch Vince's show. I can't tell you what he does, but
sure. Well, I asked a question to a person, to Jack Lord, who was on the program with you last night. Is there a tag team like the Midnight Express or Rock and Roll Express? And then he said simply they're not. And to me, anytime I've watched a tag match, it looked like 2 single matches going on at the same time is what it looked like to me.
Right. They don't quite understand what a tag team does.
Sure.
You go to work as one.
Sure. And to me, like I said, you really, and we get to see Magnum TA in his chicken outfit there after the Midnight Express got doing the tar and feather. Let's talk about the next guy, Buddy Landale. You mentioned him earlier, but Buddy, when you brought him, at this time in 1984, Buddy was probably in the best condition that he's ever been in.
Right. Physically, mentally, and everything else. I mean,
the thing about it is
get a little wild sometimes, but I go along good with him, and I can kind of control him.
The thing about it, I love that in the introduction during the match, they announced him from Los Angeles. And I've always known he was from LA. It was just more lower Alabama. That's where he's telling you he come from.
Right.
Yeah, it was a great, and then he was getting building up, and he was doing the spinning elbow drop. And then you had Brian Adidas. Now he was coming over from Dallas at the time, right?
Yeah.
Because now was he plan? Did you plan on him coming in as part of the crew?
Who?
Brian Adidas.
Not bring people and talk to them that I never, you know what I mean?
Right. So
he never was in my eyesight as being a top guy.
Sure, just sort of a guy, just so people see him on World Class, and then they come in and see him also on Mid-South.
Right.
And of course, I think at that time he was the television champion over there, and then you had the Masao Ito and Rick Rude, and this is the beginning of what looked like a claw to the throat, and the hemorrhaging from the mouth just looked devastating. What was it like when he put those holds in the arenas after building up like that?
Very good. I mean, he got heat.
So you're able to again accomplish your goal, and then, of course, it's just the repetition of television. And it looked just because you couldn't tell if it was actually the blood was actually coming from the kick to the throat or from the claw to the throat. And then this is the first opportunity the people of the Mid-South gets to see your team. And I'm talking about Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Rock and Roll Express. And in this time, instead of showing matches, you show videos. So tell me how important the video was into getting the Rock and Roll Express over.
At that time, I think it was very important. It was better than just doing matches. So I think it made him look better, don't you?
I think so. And then
video, you see.
Sure.
When they show you the trailer of the John Wayne movie, you see the trailer for 10 minutes, and that's to get you to go to the show.
Sure. And nowadays, at that time in 1984, that's when MTV was really big, and it was actually music television and not whatever it is now, but they were actually still showing videos. So I thought it was a very smart idea. And I think pretty much that Jarrett's the one that come up with doing the music videos. Did he not?
Yeah, making videos on wrestlers.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was in Memphis.
That was
Jerry Jarrett's idea.
And it was tremendous idea and then copied by everybody. I mean, everybody. In fact, I believe lots of times they would send the footage to Jarrett and what was his name? Randy West would put that stuff together. He was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary when it comes to putting the videos together. And it was important in the development of the Rock and Roll Express. Then we come to the last show, and this was I think it was the last show on the January the 26th, and this is the one where it was going to be it was a non-title match on television. It was Magnum TA, Mr. Wrestling 2 against the Midnight Express, and they talk about Boyd Pierce. People over there loved him, absolutely loved him, and he had some of the wildest suits I've ever seen. I'm not sure.
Unbelievable. It was great.
I'm not sure where in the world he got those, but he had some wild shirts, suits. I saw one of him where he was dressed in an entire gold suit. Cornette told him you have to be careful. That suit will turn you green if you're not careful there, Boyd. I mean, he was wild. I mean, he would wear different colors of socks. The people actually loved Boyd Pierce, but it seemed like to me that Boyd Pierce, his position was being brought back, was being diminished some. Is that just my impression, or was that what was going on?
I mean, it wasn't done intentionally, and I never got that. But I like Boyd. He was watching Boyd, so he wasn't going nowhere.
Sure. And like I said, the people loved him, and he was quite a character. There's no doubt about it. The match, tremendous match on television, and this is where the belts started coming out, and it was Midnight Express whipping Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA. Tell us what you were going through there, getting ready for there with these the belts.
What, did we whip them?
Yeah, we whipped them. Pulled out Cornette and Midnight whipped Magnum TA. Of course, still trying to goad TA and Wrestling 2 into a championship match.
Yeah. And it got heat. So we were just trying to keep as much heat on the Midnight Express and not kill the two and Magnum off at the same time. So,
well, I mean, in all of this, when they started pulling out the belts, two grabbed two chairs, he slid them in the ring, and then they had chairs, and the Midnight decided they were out the door, which I guess builds up for the match. And I'm going to tell you, if you haven't got the chance to see the Midnight Express against Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA, there's a match from Houston in there that is just extraordinary. Absolutely one of the best tag matches you'll ever see. And that's from Houston, Texas. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the broadcast. So now we've got the Butch Reed he's in the ring again, and again he's going to be doing the big shoulder block. And then comes his former partner Jim Neidhart. They used to be the Mid-South Tag Team Champions, and this is where Reed makes his appearance again, and they get into it. And I guess in the arenas it was still Reed and Jim Neidhart.
Yeah.
Excellent. So now we're moving on, and then we bring in Ito back again. He's against Joe Savoli. Joe Savoli, he was great, wasn't he? Jumping Joe. He was good, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I always thought he was.
Guy in the world, but yeah.
He was very, very good. And he went against, and of course they did the Ito tries to do that same thing again with that choke, and he wouldn't let it go this time. And so they send all kinds of wrestlers out there trying to finally get some disqualification on that. And it's still building the claw, I guess you would call that, the claw to the throat in that match. Then you have Nikolai Volkoff and Crusher Darso. They're against Terry Taylor and Brian Adidas. And in this is where Nikolai Volkoff sings the national anthem. And was that something that you come up with, or was that something Nikolai come up with?
No, I had to sing it. He used to do it in the dressing room.
Oh, did he?
Why don't you fucking do that on TV?
Sure.
Nobody asked me to. I said, well, I'm asking you to.
And the thing, and the thing about it is once he started it there, he was doing it everywhere. Never stopped doing the Russian national anthem. Yeah, and it was he was very good. It was very good,
and it was different,
right? And then this is where Ito comes back out, and he's again jumping in the match. I guess getting together with the Russians, and then he tries to get Ito tries to get that to claw back on him, and then Terry Taylor's getting everybody off of him. Again, building up to what's going to end up happening in the arenas. Then comes another match, and that's Buddy Landale against Lanny Poffo. And in that match, Bill Watts says repeatedly, this could be a main event. In fact, it was. It was a tremendous match. Both Buddy and Poffo really put 100% in this match.
I wonder if that was before me and Randy had the fight or after.
I'm not sure. I just know.
It was after. I like Lanny. I never had no grudge with him.
Well, this match was tremendous. It looked like to me that Poffo could probably took out Landale at any moment. I mean, he was all over him. Was that a match you also had in the arenas as well?
Yeah.
And that would, I mean, you really did. It was a really great feature with both Lanny and Poffo. And like I said, they were fantastic. Now we come up again with another one of the Rock and Roll Express videos. And again, using a video, like you were saying, as a preview, as a trailer, pretty much, to get the people ready for the Rock and Roll Express. Again, I think really before your time, and that those videos were very important in getting the Rock and Roll Express over. Talk about, if you would, what was the town's drawing in that? Do you remember what they were doing in January of that year? Were they all right?
Next week, I have all that damn books with all the figures. Yeah. When we got there, they were selling out.
Wow.
When that whole crew, but before that, I went just by myself before we got to Midnight Sweat. And Ricky and Robert and that was all the crew. Monsters.
Right. So it changed.
And when we got the rock and roll and the young ladies started coming to the matches and the young guys came to the old days, business was great.
I will admit, some of the guys did start dressing like the Rock and Roll Express. I'll admit that I did remember seeing some of the people in some of those arenas. I said earlier that they didn't, but they started dressing like them in some of the towns. Right. So what was Bill Watts, and you're presenting the tar and feather, you're presenting the whipping, you're presenting the hanging. What was Bill Watts' response to all of this?
Like I told you when he said, "You're not going to fill it up with midgets," and his wife said, "Look at your textbook, Bill." And he never, he, in my heart of hearts, I believe he tolerated it because of the money he was making, but he would have rather had bought Dasso and Duggan and all them big guys rather than Ricky and Robert and the Midnight. But it was drawing a lot of money. But
yeah, that many talks.
Right.
What was Jim Ross like at that time?
So I made him announcer.
So you would come in on, y'all would put together the shows for TV. You'd put those on Tuesday nights before.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all would get together at a hotel. Was it a hotel or at the?
Right, no, at the hotel.
And so would Jim Ross be in on that? Bud Pierce.
Yeah.
And then
Bill Watts, me, Jim Ross, and Joel, Bill's oldest son. He wanted him in the business. Read all about it, so he was sitting on the booking meet and all that kind of stuff.
So how was it working with Joel? Did he have a little bit of the George? Did he have the George Goulas complex there?
Nothing like that. Nothing.
No, I have to admit he was a pretty good announcer. I thought he was a good commentator, and of course he was doing the video, starting production and doing some videos. In fact, later on he redoes the opening to the show, and it's fantastic. Joel Watts, fantastic.
Yeah, he was very good behind that camera.
He was outstanding. So you had Jim Duggan, you had JYD. Did they resent the younger guys, the smaller guys coming in?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if they did, they'd have a show.
Right.
I mean, their paycheck went up too.
Sure. I mean, you couldn't get any better with when Duggan worked with the Midnight Express. I mean, that was big time money. It didn't matter who you teamed. If you teamed Terry Taylor with him or the Junkyard Dog, whoever you teamed with Duggan, that normally was mean a draw in a house. Now, let's see. When the decision to bring of Carl Fergie. Now, when Carl Fergie first came there, did he wrestle?
Yeah.
And so whose decision was it to put him in as a referee?
Me.
That was you. So what made you decide that he might be better off as a referee?
This is how I explained it to him.
Okay.
I said, Carl, I can't protect you from Bill Watts. You know who Bill is. He said that. But we need a referee. So if you do a good job of referee, you work every night, you won't have to worry about your job. He said, well, that sounds all right to me. So Bill told Bill needed a referee. So he said, okay. So I told him, he said, okay.
Yeah, it was, and Carl was good. He was very good. I'd like to say hello to Terry. I saw him pop up just moments ago. Hey, Terry, how you doing? Thank you for coming in. Thank you everybody for coming in tonight as we're talking about Mid-South Wrestling, the first 3 shows of January of the year. At what point did you say, okay, we've got the right combination? We're heading in the right direction. At what point did you did it? Was it in January? Was it February? When did you know you're about to like the fuse and everything was about to go?
About the first month.
First month.
Yeah, I mean when Ricky and Robert hit the building, we played the VCRs before they got to town. So when they hit the first town, they were over.
Sure.
We played the videos, you know what I'm saying?
And other than and really other than the Midnight Express and the Junkyard Dog, they were the only ones with music as well.
Right.
And then last, I want to ask you about, hey, there's Kevin Tubbs. Hey, Kevin, thank you for watching. I want to ask you about Butch Reed. We talked about him earlier. How was he to work with?
Good.
No problem.
Wasn't hard to get along with. Very all business.
Now later on, you would put Betty Landale with Butch Reed. Tell me the idea behind that.
That was when Buddy was going through his wild stage. And Butch would, he could get a little wild too. So I said, Butch, if I put you with Buddy, can you get to the fucking towns and not let him do something stupid and all that? Yeah, I like old Buddy forever. So that was as much for that as it was business in the ring.
Sure. It wasn't it.
Look after Bud Rowe.
Did I not hear a story where Buddy Landale was combing his hair in the mirror and run into Butch Reed, run into the rear?
In the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, run right into his car. Oh, was that funny? I was with him in the car behind me. By the time I pulled up, Butch is out of his car, Buddy's out of his.
Is he? Was Reed chasing him around the car?
Well,
I want to kill him.
I said, Buddy, what the fuck was you doing? You just run into the back of him. He said, I was combing my hair. Butch, combing your hair, you mother. Goes on with a promo.
Oh, my goodness. We have a question from Mr. Kevin Tubbs. He said he saw Bill Dundee, and George Barnes in the first match on television, and they gave their opponent such a whipping, won it in like 2 straight falls. So I guess it was a 2 out of 3 fall match when you and George Barnes first came. I guess, what year was that you came over?
January 75.
January 75. So what was your first town you wrestled in?
For Nick?
Yeah.
Nashville. Because we lived in Nashville, and we didn't really know about Memphis. We when Jarrett came and talked to us, he said, you boys will be in Memphis TV Saturday morning. You come in Friday night from Tupelo. I said, from Tupelo, Mississippi? He said, yeah. That was Presley's hometown. I was we're going to Tupelo.
All right.
So that's how that came about.
Well, I can tell you right now, Bill, I have been, I've taken time and I've went back and watched a lot of these shows you produced and put together, and never have there been better shows. And if anybody can find them, let me know where they're at. But these are masterpieces as far as I'm concerned. And you and everybody that have been a part of that should be proud of your accomplishment, because they are just classics. They really are.
Yeah, I mean, we were all just young guys starting, and we had a point to prove to Bill. You know how Bill would have filled it up with monsters.
Sure, and
if we had failed, he would have fired us all and brought in 10 big guys.
So
but we didn't fail.
Well, I'll tell you, and it looked like you were having just the best time as well.
Right.
It looked like you were, and everybody was given 100%. No matter who it was, they were given 100%, and you can tell it. And I think that to properly motivate and have a coach like you to motivate everybody to do 100%. And again, those shows and that year, you got to be proud of, really.
Yeah, it was good, but I had a guy that was a lot of help to me, and his name was Rodney West.
Well, I appreciate that.
He helped a lot with that. You know what I mean? Me and Ronnie got along good, on the same page on most things as far as the wrestling business and things like that. And he was a hell of a help.
Sure. And you know what I've always thought, and I think I've said this before. I've always thought that if Ole would have got out of the way when y'all were in Georgia, I believe that what happened with Mid-South would have happened in Georgia if he would have just got out of the way, because, right. In the rule of thumb in any producing any wrestling show, if you're going to run a market, you need to at least let the show run, I think, 13 weeks. Am I right?
Yeah.
So if you let it, you didn't even get that. You got 7 weeks, and you had to run shows, first night out. So it really had, no chance. And then when you end up going with Mid-South, like I said, the exact same thing possibly would have happened if they would, if Ole would have given it time. Possibly Georgia would have been the success. But anyway, that's for the books. People make their mistakes, and I believe Ole made a big one in that one. But one person that didn't was Bill Watts by hiring Bill Dundee to be his booker, and really some of the best wrestling and the best matches that I've ever seen.
Well, we had a hell of a crew. I mean, I would babysit them, and they didn't do nothing I didn't let them do. But most of the guys we had could work. I mean, Buddy could get a little screwed up sometimes, but he could work.
Well, I'll tell you, like I said, you kept the train on the tracks, if you will, and I look forward to exploring more of these shows and more of this technique and your expertise, and that's what we're going to see. But maybe educate some people about how wrestling is to be done, and we'll be doing that in the next few weeks as we continue right here. We'd like to thank everybody that had some comments and questions for it who have joined us here today. I'd like to thank Bill Dundee for sharing his expertise and his recollections of what happened in 1984. And this will be doing this again next Wednesday as we continue our study of 1984 and Mid-South Wrestling. Now, programming note, tomorrow night, it will be back with Continental Championship Wrestling's Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. Mitch and Brent will be back with you. And tomorrow night, their special guest will be the Tennessee stud, Ron Fuller. So be able to be with us. And that will start tomorrow night, starting at 7:30, starting at 7:30, 6:30 Central. And next week, Bill Dundee will be right back with us. Bill, you got anything to say before we leave tonight?
No, but now that we know the years, I have all them TVs, the sheets that we used for Watts. I looked at them all today, and I was going to get them out. 84 and 80, or 83 and 84 was what I looked at today. So I have the TV sheets that we had at the boys club. So I'll get them out. We can read them and do whatever and just see what we actually did.
Well, I'll tell you.
Where did you get them from?
I got them. I watched the shows on YouTube this past week, and of course, I think we've got some copies of the TV formats that we've collected over the year. There's something. It's great to look at. Greg Rice had a comment. He said the wrestling then was so much better than now. Them guys then was great on the mic and in the ring also. These guys had either one or the other today, or neither. And I agree with Greg. You have to respect, and those of you who have never seen the Mid-South Wrestling, especially the 1984, you really are missing it, because if you like Continental, if you like the world class, you really will love Mid-South Wrestling. And we're going to be featuring that in weeks to come. Again, we thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the superstar Bill Dundee, I'm Rodney West, and we'll see you next on the next Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. Good night, everybody.
All right, wrestling fans.